I'm accepting and moving on very swiftly.
Oh my goodness.
Because when you talk about birthdays and bromance and everything, it reminds me of the white shirts,
red ties, rolled up sleeves. Yeah.
And these things are very fluid. I think our political setup is very fluid. Things happen. And as they happen, they cause discomfort along the way. And so you will understand why there is some indifference, some resistance, if you may like, but things have to go on. Things have to move on. In fact, before the March 9th handshake, things seemed straight for Deputy President William Ruto. But after March 9th, things seemed hazy.
So this thing has given, the handshake has given President Uhuru Kenyatta the legitimacy? Remember that was the big thing?
It has, but I think...
And thrown the race wide open.
But I think for me, the handshake is probably going to be the single most important political test for President Uhuru Kenyatta in his 10 years of power. Why do I say that? Listen, he has an existing arrangement with the Deputy President where he has gone on record and said, nitafanya 10, we ufanye 10, alafu hao wengine. Those hao wengine will include Raila Odinga and the rest of them, isn't it? Then suddenly he finds himself in a situation, and we've discussed the circumstances before on this show, where he has to reach out now to Raila Odinga and say, hey, wait a minute, this country is going to the dogs, what can we talk about? So they get into this other handshake, which comes at a politically inconvenient time for the Deputy President, who thought that he was now in pole position. 2022 is not too far away. So the second term was actually going to be the place where the Deputy President consolidates his political power, so to speak, his political base ahead of launching that big home run to the presidency. So suddenly the President is dealing with two people. This gentleman is still his Deputy President, but because he's the Deputy President who is supposedly next in line, he has to be uncomfortable with this arrangement, because Raila Odinga is not saying whether he's running or not. He's leaving that question for all of you guys to guess as he goes.
But even if he doesn't run, he will still influence
exactly
who becomes the next president.
So the president has to... He knows that he needs this handshake, the one with Raila Odinga, for him to do anything in these 4 years, and he probably needs it if he has to deal with the bigger political questions. He also needs William Ruto's support right now to a certain degree, but also he cannot just shortchange him in broad daylight, and given the type of politics that they played. So if he's going to shortchange him, he has to do it in a clever way. So he has this arrangement, the two of them look like they are mutually exclusive, but he's the man to manage both of them, so that at the end of the day, if he ends up shortchanging William Ruto, I believe that the kind of politician that President Kenyatta is, he would want it to look like it was some act of God that happened, and that made it impossible for him to meet this. So how he navigates these two and comes out on the other side unscathed is going to be a very interesting
There was something the Deputy President said in the clip that you just played a little earlier when he was in Sugoi, where he said, na kama kuna wale watu wengine kutoka nje ya Jubilee wenye wanataka kuingia. Was it possibly a reference to Raila Odinga in this handshake? And this sort of brings back the history of when Raila Odinga went into Kano. I mean, remember that was an interesting thing, and then the Tinga went in, it was swallowed by the Jogo, and it caused the rumbling.
Yes, there's a long history of this kind of political arrangements, and they date as far back as 1993, when Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, as the leader of official opposition in Parliament, went into something called cooperation with Moi. And, he was very close with the former president, and they went together to Tarkwel Gorge, the Tarkwel Dam, which was a controversial plant, riddled with corruption allegations. But here is the official leader of opposition who is now working with the sitting president. And that, of course, toned down the criticism of what was happening and how the contracting of the dam was concerned. But looking at Uhuru and Raila Odinga, they've both proved in a span of a year, actually a few months, that they are very able, both capable of dividing the country. And two, they are both very capable of uniting the country. Because if you remember the mood of this nation between 8th of August and the swearing in of President Kenyatta, and later the swearing in of Raila Odinga. That was a very, very worrying time for the country. And the two managed to put their supporters in their corners, to the point that some were talking of dividing the country into two, even geographically. Now, what we are seeing now is an effort by these two to go on the positive side. But I agree with Joe on the issue of 2022. Is it about succession? Because there is Ruto again on this side. So Uhuru will now look like, just through the handshake, that he has two handshake dates. There is the first handshake of 2012, and now there is the handshake of March 9th. Especially because these two are politicians, and politicians are politicians. They would want to convert it into capital, and both of them have a very great appetite for the presidency.
This is what Uhuru-Raila says on Twitter about the handshake. I couldn't resist this. For the record, ODM is 14 years old, and it's like ODM is back together. Balala, Uhuru, Raila, Mudavadi were all founding members of ODM. Handshake is ODM.
You know, he's got a point.
Right?
He's got a point.
They were all there.
Making organ.
It was called Pentagon, I think it was.
Yes, that's right. Yes, which also had Charity Ngilo at the time. Yeah.
But what if he decides to take a back seat and say, let the people decide?
Isn't that what he's already said?
You mean Uhuru?
When he had the round table the other day?
Personally, I think that is his style. That's what he's going to do. He's going to let people decide. He might not say let them decide. I just don't see him campaigning vigorously for anyone in 2022. That is just from all the indications. In any case, given the delicate political situation he has to manage, that might end up being his default setting.
And now there was what you were talking about, there's the angle of we have two handshakes to compare. And you heard what Ngunjiri Wambugu was saying the other night on Newsnight, you know, the two handshakes, which one was for the people of Kenya, which one was for two communities. And it's interesting now, you know, I mean, politicians are very good with 2020 hindsight, you know, that now, oh, wait, that one was not about the people. Yeah. This one is the one for the people. Which one? To what extent can we compare the two, Francis?
It's a mix of both, because I see more of a question of interest than anything else. Where do you fit most? Is it the country first, or the community first, or even the individual politicians first? Which follows what? That, I think, is where the whole question is. But I remember one day when we were here, and Lina said that the decision on who becomes the president is made very close to the election.
That's right.
Around 4 months or so.
That's right.
So then that argument, if applied here, then it would mean it is too early to determine who becomes what, who doesn't become what, or who coalesces with who. Some of these formations that we see today, maybe in a few months, in a year or two, maybe change, then we start new ones, and so on and so forth. Very fluid kind of a situation. I remember the late Honorable John Mishuki talking about juggling
the liver. Juggling the
liver.
Right.
Maybe that's where we are. That's kind of a scenario, juggling that liver.
That even has, you know, women political leaders today, they took off their resistance hats and, you know, put on the other ones.
Brigade berets.
Brigade berets, yes.
Yeah.
And now they're, who would have thought you would see someone like Gladys Wanga
have you taken
and
notes?
Guru, you know, sharing a podium, and Mishimboko, you know, I mean.
Have you taken note even on social media?
Yeah.
Some of the most fierce critics of President Uhuru Kenyatta, a few days ago, are now his most staunch defenders. Actually, they were the ones who are attacking Moses Kuria more viciously. Some of the guys who could not stand Raila Odinga are today appreciating him more, probably even more than his erstwhile supporters. So that shows you how fluid our Kenyan political scene is. Suppose that handshake crumbles tomorrow.
We'll be right back to where
settings.
Actually, the only reason everything looks so festive, we are almost looking like we are high on some herb as a country. Gladys Wanga and
Guru,
almost hugging. Oh, they embrace.
They embrace, my friend.
They had to, after all, their movement.
You know, this is not normal. I mean, there's something in the air that we are smoking. It could be the handshake, but two, it's the distance between now and the time left between now and the next election. If the election was closer, real colors will be displayed. What we are seeing now is part of the euphoric feelings that we get as a country. And you see it on National Prayer Breakfast, for example, where people look like very good Christians, complete with a nice choir. These are people who insult each other during the...
Your definition of nice is very nice.
Yeah, very, very, very nice, yes. You see them singing together and holding hands and all that. There's that euphoria that comes with the knowledge that, but the election is about 3 years away. So we have the luxury of even acting. And
but I would say this about that. I think you are absolutely right. But I believe that it also speaks to something, that there is a place that we desire to be politically as a country, that every time we have glimpses of that place, you see this very calm, almost surreal sort of feeling around the country, where you see people like what we saw at that embrace thing, where people embracing 20 times in the same press conference. So it looks to me like there's a place that we would like to go politically, that somehow there's something that keeps stopping us.
And you know, Joe, where that place is?
Yeah.
2002, if you remember, we were covering the transition from Moi to Mwai Kibaki. And I remember the country was rallying around two candidates, both from the same region, Mwai Kibaki and Uhuru Kenyatta. Very, very colorful and very energetic campaign. Both campaigns were very, very energetic. And I remember Mwai Kibaki arriving from London in a neck brace, looking quite not in good shape.
Yeah.
And people walked. And we covered this from Jomo Kenyatta International Airport to Uhuru Park.
Yeah.
There was this 1963 feeling all over again. Yet, if you look at the distribution of the voters that then voted for the two candidates, both of them got national votes, not regional. No, they didn't get into some tribal blocks for them to get where. But I remember the mood, and I wish the country can go back to that mood where everybody collectively believes. In fact, even those in Kanu were not really
no, they were
feeling
not
so bad about losing.
It is true.
So even the losers were still feeling that, okay, but this is a good direction for the country. And I remember in January 2003, some report saying that, February 2003, that Kenyans are the most optimistic
in the world. But I was going to say that...
Gentlemen, 2019 is shaping up, so just finish, because we need to
okay, and I think I will just start that. So if we are looking at the focus for 2019, I believe, I will not make the whole prophecy, but I believe that if you look at what we have seen these past few days, where there is almost like a choreography around the number of people and how they have come out to say certain things about the president, to say we support, bringing all these groups of people that we've never seen together. Today we've seen all these groups of women. I think there is a place that whole thing is going, and that is left for us to see. I don't think it was some random set of events that suddenly were triggered by the president's comments in Mombasa. I do believe that there is a political something, whatever it is, that is building up, that 2019 might give us glimpses into what it will end up being.
I don't want to be a prophet, because that prophet name has brought issues recently. So let me not even go that direction.
Please, you had better not.
But I can anticipate. And my anticipation is that this year will be very political. In fact, extremely political. Why? Particularly that question of population census, that is where the whole matter is. Because you remember there's also a discussion around the formula of sharing revenue. And population is at the heart of that formula. So everybody will be making sure that, will be trying to make sure that their region, their county gets as many people as possible entered into that census. And so don't be surprised if some guys import people here and there. Don't be surprised if some people are exported to other counties.
Others were trying some mathematics that wouldn't work last year, enticing women to give birth, but they were a little off the mark.
Just to deal with the numbers, because that is where the whole issue is. But ultimately, maybe this is also the year where we start confronting some of the pertinent issues, i.e., the system of elections. Because no matter how well we distribute these positions, we deal with inclusivity, as long as we don't get the formula right on determining who gets that top seat, that will be a problem. We may end up with another handshake post-2022 if we don't get the electoral system right. And maybe this is the best time to do it because everybody seems to be listening to each other and talking less.
Are they? I'm not sure.
I hope
and
so.
I'm not sure they're listening to each other.
No,
but
no.
At least
everyone's talking, but
they're hugging. They can't be hugging as they shout at each other.
The ears and okay, all right. So I think it's time for us to do the last word for each of us, because we're now getting into our predictions for 2019.
All right. My angle tonight comes from the heart of Africa, the land of Patrice Emery Lumumba and the self-declared Papa Marechal Mobutu Sese Seko Kukung Bendu Azabanga. Less than 24 hours ago, the country's Electoral Commission announced the much-awaited presidential election results. In what surprised many, an opposition candidate, Felix Antoine Tshisekedi, was declared the winner, beating a field of over 20 candidates, including the one anointed by President Joseph Kabila. Since then, there have been mixed reactions to this from within and without the country. France and former colonial master Belgium have expressed doubts about the election, while the other opposition candidate, Martin Fayulu, has outrightly rejected the outcome. Of course, it's not in my place to say what happened or not, who won or who didn't, but this is no doubt an important juncture for a country whose 59 years of independence have known little more than political mayhem and chaos. A great African tragedy, some have called it. This would in fact be the first change of power by the ballot in 60 years. Wow. As the country sorts out its latest political row, it would do the lovely continent of Africa a great favor if there were no violence, no return to the all too familiar path of civil war. After all, a peaceful DRC would be a boon for Kenya and the East African region. It would be the least of a legacy for the great Pan-Africanist son of the soil, Patrice Lumumba, who fought relentlessly for a truly free Congo and an African continent full of dignity, and whose life was so cruelly cut short by the same forces still at play in DRC 6 decades later. All I can say to these African brothers is good luck. Bonne chance, les chers Congolais.
Well, I cannot even attempt that. However, before I punch it, somebody is helping me do it. Andrew True Calling on Twitter. He's saying, the strategy of finishing a leader is to dismantle his dependent. So Murathe has just started. Another party is coming. Athman Meli, he's telling you, Linus, that Raila Odinga is a spare wheel that can fit a tractor and at the same time can take you home with a Vitz. How about that? Anyway, today was the last day for Halake Wako in office at the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. A new boss is coming, Talib Mbarak. Remember the crackdown on corruption last year? Let's hope that there will be a better way of fighting corruption, a more effective one, and less fancy, but more productive. Or do I say more fruitful? i.e., that which has been looted comes back and goes to the place it was supposed to be. And those who looted get their place where they belong. Kamiti, Langata, Shimolatewa, or maybe Kodiaga. Best of luck, Talib Mbarak, as you take that seat in the fight against corruption.
Now, 2019, I project a beautiful, wonderful, amazing, joyous, and fulfilling year from the men and women who always brighten our faces with joy and fill our hearts with pride. I'm talking about our sportsmen and women who persistently and consistently hold the country's flag aloft, and together with it, our dignity in the community of nations. 2019 is one very packed sports and games calendar, and these men and women will do us proud. They'll do us proud at the World Cross Country Championship in Denmark. Our athletes will reign like kings at the World Athletics Championships in Doha, Qatar. They will win the marathon races in London, New York, and Berlin, just as Eliud Kipchoge will decide. Our sportsmen and women will dominate at the All-African Games in Morocco, and our women volleyballers will qualify and make a statement at the Volleyball World Cup in September in Japan. But before that, our national soccer team, Harambee Stars, will shine at the Africa Cup of Nations final in Egypt. This, after all, is the first appearance in the finals since 1994. And you know, that is long. How long? 25 years ago. The world's richest person, Jeff Bezos, was selling second-hand books from a garage when Kenya last played at the Africa Soccer Finals. Overall, get ready for a great year in sports. And is it just me, or our national anthem sounds really good during sports events? Enjoy 2019.
Wow.
It most certainly does. Here's a number of institutions that I would be wanting to take a look at in the year 2019 in my take tonight. Number one is a much touted, much celebrated, at least thus far, the DPP and the DCI. A lot has happened in that office in the last couple of months, what with the arrests that we've seen and the somewhat aggressive war on corruption. We'll be watching to see whether the investigations that are done stand in a court of law. And speaking of courts of law, the judiciary is also one place we'll be looking at with a number of the corruption cases that are set to come up. The IEBC, with what is coming up with the boundaries review process. That is something that is bound to hit some raw political nerves this year. The media as well. It is our hope, at least, and I will be frank and honest on my take tonight, that we can start to set the agenda rather than follow the politicians around. Perhaps, as some people say, we do. But finally, the place I would like to look at is the church. And hopefully that no politician will be allowed at a church podium, at a pulpit, in the year 2019. For as we heard just the other day, Senator Susan Kihika had some interesting things to say about opinions and how many people have them and which body parts that were made reference to at the very podium of a pulpit that is holy and haloed. That is my take tonight. Thanks for watching.
I get a quick correction from those watching us, and I agree. I was 10 years wrong. Harambee Stars last played in 2004, not 1994. And yes, they played in Tunisia, lost against Mali, lost against, I think, one other team, but won against Burkina Faso 3-0, I remember.
Oh.
Even more, one more correction. Chekai Musa is telling us that the oldest political party currently is Ford Kenya.
Okay.
And not
ODM. Okay. So
how about Kano is the oldest party?
Yeah.
And we certainly thought that.
Oh, and here's another correction from Peter Kenneth. I understand that he did speak out on the VAT issue last year when it was a big one.
You know what this says? Thank you for watching.
Yes. And it does say we're open to just that sort of thing. That's what this show is about. Thank you for watching. Jamila Mohammed will hopefully be back next week. We miss her, we love you, and make sure you...
She'll be noisy.
You didn't hear her speak?
Oh. Yeah, so that's the unsaid joke.
We'll
that Jamila is
the
loudest member of this gang, but we will embrace her when she returns, as we should. Have a good night. Thank you very much for watching. This was NewsGang. Keep the feedback going. The hashtag is NewsGang on social media. Our handles are out there at Citizen TV Kenya. Have a good night. And when do we stop saying Happy New Year? Is it done now?
At the end of the month.
Oh, okay. Right. Oh, Happy New Year. All right. See you.